Welcome to Sports from the Couch.
I gotta say, it's the stupidest thing in sports.
With your host, Mike Mercado.
Players cannot stand him. Coaches cannot stand him. Most importantly, the fans can't stand him.
Brought to you by Mercado Airwaves.
I'm gonna say it once, and hopefully I'm wrong, but it's a disaster waiting to happen.
That is so bad, that is absolutely brutal.
Hello and welcome in, friends, to another edition of Sports from the Couch here on Mercado Airwaves. I'm your host, Mike Mercado. I want to thank you so much for making us a part of your day on this Monday, July 12th, 2021. I hope each and every one of you had a wonderful, safe weekend. It was a busy one for sure in the UFC, in the world of soccer, the NBA Finals, and so much more, including in Major League Baseball as we get to the All-Star break. And that means we need to take a look back at your Chicago Cubs and some recent news that has come out when it comes to some players having some things to say, whether or not you consider him a leader. Wilson Contreras had some thoughts on the Chicago Cubs, and David Ross had to make sure he intervened as the manager, and he had some thoughts as well. This coming off of a bad last 10 games, and of course, Jed Hoyer actually spoke to the media and had some thoughts about the losing streak and the trade deadline. We'll get to all that and so much more on this edition of Sports from the Couch here on Mercado Airwaves. Let's take care of some housekeeping notes. You can follow us all over the universe. I'm on Twitter at Mike M Media, Instagram, Mike Mercado Media, and you can be interactive with the show on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk. You can keep up to date with everything we're doing on the network by following us at Mercado Airwaves. There you can see when we drop brand new episodes of our pop culture show, The Good Brothers, our life podcast, the Two Nerds of a Feather podcast, the Gone Missing podcast, our sister podcast, where they spotlight missing people who didn't get mainstream attention. Of course, right here on Sports from the Couch, you can catch us there. And all our interviews that we do with athletes and celebrities, you can get that on Twitter at Mercado Airwaves. And more importantly, to help us out, download us, like, rate, review, and shares wherever you get your favorite podcast at Mercado Airwaves. You can see the video version on the podcast at youtube.com/Mercado Airwaves Network. Make sure you guys subscribe to us right there. And on Roku, we have partnered with the amazing people over at the Rewind Sports 60. So check us out over there on Roku. Like us on Facebook. And of course, patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves if you would like to support us. And check out our swag at teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves. So before we get into the quotes and the response from the manager and what Jed Hoyer had to say before all that, let's just kind of take a step back right now. Where we're at heading into All-Star Week, we have the Home Run Derby, we had the Futures game where the Cubs had a nice little surprise star come up there, win the MVP. But beyond that, let's take a look at this team heading into this All-Star break. As I guess you could say fair that they're stumbling into the All-Star break, the Northsiders that is. And they're 44-46. They're 8 games back right now of the Milwaukee Brewers. The Cincinnati Reds are actually ahead of them right now. They've had a nice win streak when it comes to, I think they're 8-2 in their last 10. And they're actually tied, the Cubs are, with the St. Louis Cardinals. At the All-Star break, they are 28-17 at home and 16-29 away. 2-8 in their last 10. And before we go deep into that and the quotes, if you look at that 28-17 at home, 16-29 away, I think a lot of that has to do with the simple fact that a lot of their stars aren't playing. And we know in sports that role players, that guys that aren't normal starters, that aren't at superstar level, that they typically perform better at home. You know, and who could blame them, right? Like, we just know that's sports, that's how that works out. So it's kind of a reflection of this team. It's two tales of this Cubs team when they're healthy and when they're not. And, you know, we're right here in Chicago. We've seen a lot of that. We've seen a lot of unhealthy baseball. And for the White Sox, it's been going up in a good trajectory and they're getting guys back. For the Cubs, they haven't been able to recover, especially after that horrible June, which was coming off of a great May. And then, you know, not so great of a start to July heading into the All-Star break. So, why are we here, though? The main subject matter of it, right? We know they're struggling. We know they have a lot of guys hurt. But Wilson Contreras was talking to, I believe, Gordon Whitmire of NBC Sports, and all this came out in quotes a few days ago. And I'll actually, if you're watching the video version of the podcast, I will bring those up right now. And if you are listening to us, we'll make sure to read them down for you. If you're seeing the video version of the podcast, blue is Wilson Contreras and red is David Ross. So, quote, no, I don't, to be honest. I feel like everybody was off. Everybody was distracted. I don't know why. Probably because the All-Star break is pretty close. It is the last day of the first half. I don't think that way, but I didn't think we were on today, says Wilson Contreras. He continued, I think there is a lot going on, he said. There are a lot of things I like to say, but I'd rather keep it to myself than say it, that is. Finally, Wilson Contreras says, that's on everybody's work ethic and job, he said. We have to win as a team, but also I cannot ask everybody to play like I do or to play like Baez and I play. Everyone is different. I know they might be tired, but I'm here to win. I'm here to compete. And that's what I like to get from everybody else. End quotes of Wilson Contreras. So let's just stop there for a second, right? And he mentioned before this that, he considers himself a team leader. Okay. First, let's break down, was Wilson talking about anybody particular? Because it's interesting, he singles out him and Javi Baez. Well, who are the other members of this core team that he would be speaking of? Because it'd be a little weird if he were just talking about role guys or minor leaguers or people who weren't part of this franchise or aren't going to be part of the future of this franchise. It'd be weird if he were talking about them. So then who does that leave? Anthony Rizzo and Chris Bryant. And, of course, guys sprinkling along the way. So is he saying something about Anthony Rizzo's back or what he thinks maybe be playing something off? Maybe Chris Bryant getting ready for free agency. I don't know if that's what he believes. He could, he couldn't. But that's what is important about when you hear quotes like this. Because while I'm going to give you my opinion of whether or not Wilson was right or wrong, these are the can of worms that do open to fans, media, podcasters, analysts. It doesn't matter because people talk and they love the sport. And they love this team, and they're interested, especially if you're a Cub fan, on what the future is. And this is the first time we've seen like a little kink in the armor of, are they all on the same page? Do they all get along? And like we've known here in Chicago, watching The Last Dance, not everybody gets along. But this is the first time where I've noticed since 2015 that people are getting called out for effort by other superstar players. So David Ross responded. Ross disputed Contreras' claim that players lacked effort, then conspicuously avoided the question of whether the 6-year starter is considered a team leader. Asked if he viewed Contreras as a leader in the clubhouse and how his comments Saturday night impact the role, Ross said, quote, I think Wilson is a big part of our team. I'll say that one more time. I think Wilson is a big part of our team. Now, this is from a catcher to another catcher. Teammates, mind you, too, right in that World Series here. Ross added, I think he said last night needs to be said in-house and not to the media. I think he understands that. I think that's a good lesson, but I think good is going to come if that makes any sense. So it looks like Ross is kind of saying that old adage of like, keep it in-house, keep it in home. But at this point, like, if they're not having these conversations as it is, then there's been a big problem. And I want to give a lot of props to David Ross because I think he's managed the hell out of this team, all things being, equal, all the things that they've given to his roster and they've taken away from him. It's weird to me, though, if they haven't already had this conversation in-house. And again, I don't know what this does by letting us know it. I don't know how that impacts them playing. You and I can have a speculation here on Sports from the Couch. But like, this is only Sports from the Couch. It doesn't matter. It's what they do and what they say. So the manager continues, I think he was frustrated. Ross said of Contreras' comments Saturday, he's been around here a long time and been a part of a lot of winning. And it's the first time really he's had to go through a little bit of this. Different stuff going on. And I think he sees things from a different perspective with what he has to deal with behind the plate and playing both sides of that and making sure everybody's on the same page with what they're bringing every single day. And he was frustrated with some things. And he was kind of vocal with that to the media It was a lesson for him that he'll probably want to handle that more in-house. And if nothing else, Ross said the break is, quote, coming at a really good time. And I don't know if it's a bad thing that he brought this publicly, because sometimes you need a little bit of a spark in the behind, right? And sometimes guys do feel too comfortable that they can kind of do whatever they want, or that they're not going to get called out for it, or that maybe that they're the team leaders, so who's going to dare say anything to them? I don't know if any of this is true. It's just speculation, and it's just talking about locker rooms that we've been in, or work environments that we've been in. And I think Ross calling out Wilson Contreras for this, while also saying we shouldn't be doing this to the media, is a little weird. He's answering the question. That's all we can ask for from our manager or from any CEO, where it's just transparency. But I think that's also a little funny that he talks about talking through the media, and that's what he does. But I'm sure he had conversations getting catcher to catcher behind closed doors. But these weird notion that, you can't speak your mind or you can't tell the truth. We know they're bad. They know they're bad. Now, if he's saying maybe he's questioning effort, that's different than the media saying it. And I think that should be impactful. And I think the fact that he is saying it in front of cameras, in front of journalists, in front of media members, it should be taken more seriously within the clubhouse, opposed to it being taken as some offense. Because if you haven't had a conversation about how you're bad already, and how you got to get things right, and how this is the last hurrah, then it's weird to me. Then all of a sudden you're going to get mad about this. You should be mad about your play. Whether or not you're healthy, you're injured, you're worried about your contract. Especially knowing what Jed Hoyer said. And, Theo's on mine because he's talked about that GMs and organizations need to take back the analyticals, and this is in the middle of what the Cubs are doing. They're looking at these players, they're projecting them, and they've drafted some guys, they got some youngsters in the top 100, but now it's push come to shove when it comes to contracts, and you have one of these guys that's probably the most valuable of your team, because I've seen people out there saying that Wilson isn't even that good, or he's been the reason why they've sucked. Wilson's one of the reasons your team is where they're at right now. Plain and simple. And all this coming off of Jed Hoyer, again, a Freudian slip of Jed Hoyer and his comments. And actually, we can go ahead and pull up that right now. I have the audio of it. This is Cubs president of baseball operations, Jed Hoyer, on the team's recent losing streak and its potential impact on the trade deadline. This was on July 8th. This is Cubs president of baseball operations, Jed Hoyer.
Well, I think I've always said that you're trying to look at the standings too much. I think that you have to look at what kind of baseball you're playing, and we came off an 11-game losing streak. So, listen, I think we've believed in these guys since 2015. They've had a ton of success, and I would never count these guys out. But 11 days ago, we were certainly fully on the buy side of this transaction, and everyone was calling about that. And obviously, people are now calling to see which players are available. So it's a very different scenario than we expected, and life comes at you fast. 11 days ago is not where we were mentally, and obviously, 11 games certainly changes a lot of things.
So he's right there admitting to you that people have called, that he's taken calls. So if you're a player, I understand having a little bit of trepidation or a little hesitance as you're playing a game, something in the back of your mind. But these are the same guys, right? And you got to take it in face value. These are the same guys who talk about they don't listen to all that. That it's a distraction. Of course they listen to it. Of course they listen to it. So you've heard from the catcher, you've heard from the manager, and now you've heard from the president. And all of it just got me thinking. Let's go down this way. Was Wilson right? Wilson Contreras was right in his statement. You don't have to like that he went to journalists, media members, social media, however he wanted to spread the message. He was correct in his thinking. I can also appreciate people who are saying you should keep it indoors. But if you already haven't had this conversation indoors and you're still not doing anything, and it's because of effort and not injury, according to your star, one of your stars, one of the pillars of your team moving forward, you got to put some credence to his statement. Is Wilson a leader? Now, I've always believed you don't call yourself a leader. People will tell you whether or not. People will show you you're a leader by following you. Do I think Wilson Contreras is a leader? Yeah, to the pitching staff, to certain guys, maybe to a certain age group of guys as well. But like, I don't know if Ian Happ is looking at Wilson Contreras as a leader. Because is Ian Happ sitting there saying like, well, I'm having a really cruddy season. Is he talking about me? What if you're Jason Hayward? Are you following him? Or are you following Wilson Contreras? Like this whole thing, when you start thinking about like a Jason Hayward, about his contract situation, and he, of course, he knows how people are speaking of him. When it comes to his liability as an offensive player. So, are these guys seeing Wilson Contreras as a leader? Is there a division line in the locker room of who follows this guy and who follows this guy? I don't know. But if the manager is saying he's very important, but doesn't straight out say he's one of our leaders, because go ask the St. Louis Cardinals who their leader is. It's Yachty. Go ask when Buster Posey was doing the damn thing the way he was for the Giants. He was. And you got to be fair. Wilson Contreras is maybe the best offensive catcher in the National League and a heck of a catcher for pitchers. It's crazy. So, the context of who said it and the response to it, I think is what makes this very interesting for Cub fans and for people in baseball. Because now you've heard what one of your star players has to say about key members of the franchise. You heard what your manager had to say. You've heard what the president had to say. You saw the moves they made this offseason. Because it always goes back to that Yu Darvish trade. And as the trade deadline looms, what can the Cubs really use right now? A stopper, an ace pitcher. When they were going through that horrible losing streak, there were 2 opportunities in which Yu Darvish would have pitched. Do you honestly think that losing streak would have gone that way? Do you think your rotation would be as bad as it's been later on, and now how depleted your bullpen has become because of it, or the lack of pitches they've thrown because your starters can't get them to your star guys in that bullpen? If you have an ace like Yu Darvish, let's say you trade Chris Bryant, right? Or have Javier Baez, or you trade both. What are you going to be looking for next season? Oh, a Javier Baez or a Chris Bryant. With this trade deadline looming, it brings frustration because there hasn't been a lot of clarity of what they want to do. And because of this losing streak, on top of what was a great start, now you're in this weird limbo. At least with this losing streak, they've kind of told on themselves a little bit, or they've made the decision easier. But you've seen how bad some of these lineups can be for the Cubs. So if you're somebody who's just dying for the rebuild, just dying to get this thing going, it's going to be a long time of bad baseball before you get back to 15, 16. A little bit of 17. That's the thing that nobody wants to mention. Because you're not restarting with Chris Bryant or Javier Baez. You're getting rid of these guys. Now, you might keep Wilson and you might keep one of the 2. But just think about the turnaround and then think about the development of this team. Because people always wonder, how can a team like the Dodgers be this way? And we talked about this on an episode a few weeks back at this point. But development is huge. Who have the Cubs developed in that starting rotation, in that bullpen, or in that starting offense? There's a few guys, right? The main guys. But then there are some guys that have not developed or have not been able to take it to that next level or been able to stay healthy. And that has hurt this team, especially when they've made big trade after big trade after big trade, trying to win within these windows for their championship, for that second one. And you're now in this moment of what are they going to do? What are they going to do at the end of this month for the trade deadline? And knowing now how things kind of are shaping out in the clubhouse, how players are talking, how managers are responding, what the president of operations has said, the moves they've already made this offseason. And I think nobody else has kind of put, and I'm assuming that the ownership and the front office has talked about this, but that ballpark may sell out for the White Sox series, but that's about it. If this team is bad and it is rebuilding, they will not be selling out a bunch of games. They might tell you that they've sold 37,000 tickets, 40,000 tickets. Watch how many butts are in the actual seat if things keep going this way. So now you've invested in a brand new neighborhood, new hotels, parking lot, restaurants. You've invested in this marquee network. You've renovated this entire stadium. You've gone to political war with the city and the aldermen through the neighborhood. All to put a garbage team, maybe not even garbage at times, a mediocre team, a non-contender. I mean, it's crazy. It is crazy. And that game where Jake Arrieta had a 7-run lead given to him, and they just choked it up. That it was not only the turning point of the season, but that was the moment where whatever crack the shield had finally completely broke open. And Wilson Contreras, just stating what we all have said, is nothing more than the ticking time bomb that finally went off. Somebody had to say it. And I'm a little surprised on David Ross's response. But again, he's backing his guys while throwing one under the bus. But if they haven't had this conversation already, and this is news to them, then shame on them. You know, it's still early. Who knows what happens? Injuries happen. But if you listen to what Jed just had to say, and you listen to these comments, and you've seen the way that they've been playing on the field, it doesn't look like they're going to make a bounce back, that they're going to recover. It looks like it's only heading in this direction. So now the real question is, are they smart enough to get the right guys for these deals? Are they crude enough business-wise to make sure that they know the right deal to make if they're going to keep somebody? And are they going to scout and develop fast enough that their rebuild or their regroup doesn't diminish all the investment they've made in this IP, this property, this business, this franchise that seemed for a long time to be heading in the right direction? And just as fast as it started, like Jed Hoyer said, time and life comes at you fast. And that's what's happened for these Chicago Cubs heading into this All-Star break. But with that, my friends, that'll do it for us on this edition of Sports from the Couch. I want to know, what do you think is going to happen with this Cubs team? How bad are things going to get? Are they going to be complete sellers in the trade deadline? Will they re-sign any of these guys? Will they bounce back? How does the NL Central shake out? I want to know it all. Let me know your thoughts. We're all over the universe. I'm on Twitter at Mike M Media, Instagram, Mike Mercado Media, and you can be interactive with the show on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk. And if you are on ROKU, that is right, Roku. We are on the Rewind Sports 60. That is right, my friends. Your boy is on Roku. We have partnered up with the amazing people over at the Rewind Sports 60, so check us out over there on Roku. Of course, you can see the video version of the podcast on youtube.com/Mercado Airwaves Network. Make sure you guys subscribe to us there. And on Facebook at Mercado Airwaves. We're on all major podcast platforms at Mercado Airwaves. Keep up to date with the network at Mercado Airwaves on Twitter to see what we're up to on the Pop Culture Show, The Good Brothers, our life podcast over at the Two Nerds of a Feather podcast, the Gone Missing podcast, our sister podcast that spotlights missing people that didn't get mainstream attention. And of course, the Sports from the Couch episodes that drop every few days, including Monday and on Saturday. That's at Mercado Airwaves. Make sure you subscribe to us on there. You can become a producer. Support us at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves and check out our swag at teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves. That'll do it for us, guys. Thank you so much. We love you. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. We will see you next time here on Sports from the Couch on the Mercado Airwaves Network. I'm Mike Mercado.